Hello, everybody. It's George from CAL. This is part 2 of our Lunch and Learn series. We're going to probably have about 8 or 10 of these, covering other modules and even some Lunch and Learns that we'll compare in some future sessions, Great Plains functionality versus Acumatica. So they're going to be taking advantage of the Lunch and Learn series that, bringing good information to people in a concise fashion. Today we're going to cover general ledger, financial reporting, banking, payables, accounts receivable. We'll also do a little bit with the mobile app as we've done in the past and talk a little bit about reporting and dashboards and functionality. So we'll continue to build on everything that we have. So this is the agenda. Everybody's seen it. I think we're pretty much good to go. Today we're going to, the demo itself is going to be done by both Stacy as well as Sean. You'll be hearing from both of our senior Acumatica specialists. We're going to just touch on these slides. Again, we went into a lot of detail on these slides in the first session. I'm not going to bore everybody with this. Digital transformation. Acumatica, most systems today, probably if you're not on Acumatica, you're in the middle there, modern technologies, where your client server application, maybe you can access it by the cloud, but you're not truly in a digital platform. The way to get there is to look at a product that was actually developed in a digital time frame. Acumatica came on the market in 2010, where almost every other product out there on the market is at 1999, 2000 time frame or older, including Great Plains, which was developed in 1993. So again, today we're going to focus on the upper right quadrant, the financial management solution. We're not going to touch on any of the other solutions today, the project accounting or the inventory. We will touch on the customer management or CRM in the next session on next Wednesday. This edition is, it's actually the financial edition. So we're not going to really touch on any of the field service, the e-commerce, or the construction, distribution, or the manufacturing. Those build on top of the financial platform. So even though Acumatica has all these things that we can, in effect, plug in to that environment, these will be things that, again, we'll cover in future Lunch and Learns. What we're, really just want to take away from this slide that we talked about last time is when you look above in that upper left-hand corner, you see that, there's 3 flavors. There's a small business edition for, companies that are a little smaller that, come in a 5 and a 10 user. And then there's the resource level offering, which they call Advanced Edition, that then it starts to incorporate the ability to do multiple users and things of that nature. So we won't spend a lot of time. The big thing here on this slide here is in the middle, the Acumatica Cloud XRP platform. That's where really all of the capabilities of this product become available, because it was a platform that was written with the latest in the tool sets. Included, we talked a little bit about responsive design, being able to change the screens. All of that would not be possible if it wasn't, written in that time frame that now that technology was available. And we also talked about the fact that we can host it in AWS as a SaaS platform, and we can do it in a subscription and run it wherever you want, whether it be Azure, or you can even purchase the product. So Acumatica gives you a lot of capabilities. When we come to connecting with your customers, and all the modules in Acumatica are connected and meant to work together, including platforms outside of that, Acumatica, where we start talking to our customers in a B2B fashion or to a B2C, business to business or business to consumer, all connected in a single platform. 6,500 customers currently, as of this slide was from the summit, which was 2 or 3 months ago. I wouldn't doubt if that number is more like 7,000, but again, we can only talk about the published numbers. A lot of customers, a lot of adoption in the field, because it is a great platform to work with. Again, we talked a little bit about this, that, if you run it SaaS, Acumatica partnered with AWS with their advanced technology and the security that they have with all their data centers. Not many people might know, but Amazon Web Services is probably, as large, if not larger, than Microsoft is when it comes to hosting client data and making that available to businesses around the world. Again, we talked a little bit about this, Acumatica being a cloud platform, being able to integrate solutions like DocuSign, Power BI, Adobe Sign, being able to tie into Avalara's tax engine, seamless integration, Office 365, BigCommerce, web platforms, HubSpot. I mean, it's so much easier when you're talking with a cloud platform to another cloud platform. That means less cost for you. It means the ability to, in many cases, out of the box, be able to bring these new ways to do business with your customers, into focus, where other systems may not be able to do it at all, or if you do, you're going to spend a lot of money, creating that level of integration, or just even the setup. Security. I think we talked about this real quick last time. Security. We had 4 or 5 GP clients get hacked in the last 12 months, and their data was held by for ransom. And many of those companies had to pay the money to get their data back, and in other cases they didn't, and we literally had to go into rebuild scenarios where we had to go back to an old backup, and in some cases the backups weren't in the place or as current as we wanted them to. They were very, very costly, for lack of better words, costly situations for both the client. Obviously we don't control those environments, but we had to help them rebuild them. So this is not something that you would have to worry about. With Acumatica does a lot of government contracting, so all their data centers are, have the latest security, and so would you if you were running your accounting platform in their environment. Again, we talked about, again, the digital platform. Acumatica, I mean, they've done demonstrations 3 years ago where Alexa was going in and getting a vendor balance out of the system. This platform, is equipped to be able to not only be displayed on all these different device sizes, but can actually integrate in a digital way. We talked about that even they demonstrated on their latest version of their expense management where, you take a picture of a receipt. I mean, it's great. You got a picture of your receipt. Acumatica showed where they actually, built into the latest version of Acumatica, the capability of doing OCR, optical character recognition, where it actually read the receipt and saw that the expense was for the Cosmopolitan Hotel, and what started to fill that information into the expense reimbursement request, and that's what we mean by digital transformation. So Acumatica is equipped to be able to do those kind of things. All right, we talked about choice, being able to run it where you want. Your data is your data. That's one big difference between Acumatica and many of the other cloud solutions. Whether you talk about, NetSuite or, some of the other ones that are out there, NetSuite is the one that comes to mind. You can't get at your data. You can't take a copy of your data unless you're leaving them. Then they give it to you in a comma or tab delimited basis, and it's in a non-relational database. Acumatica, anytime, any day, any hour, you can take a snapshot of your data if it's running in the SaaS cloud. You can take that snapshot, you can load a 2-user version of Acumatica on a laptop with MySQL or full SQL, and you can restore the Acumatica version that you're running in the cloud, and you can restore the snapshot, and you can have access to your data in with your terms. And if you know enough about SQL, you can actually go right into the table structures of Acumatica and pull your data out in a relational fashion. Nobody, as far as I know, offers that on an accounting platform. So we talked a little bit about growth-friendly licensing. Acumatica, we talked about the small business edition, 5-user or 10-user, but when you go beyond that, you go into what they call a resource level. And again, you can go back to the first webinar where we talked about this a little bit more detail, but they give you an environment that then allows you to run your size company. And they don't care, if you add, at that resource level, 15 people, 20 people. I mean, if you've got a bunch of people entering, time cards, and I'm talking about the smallest resource level, and you've got 50 or 60 people, they don't nickel and dime you for every user. I mean, and then same thing if you're a small business customer, you start a small business, and you grow double that size, but yet that same resource level is still servicing your database, with the response times that are comfortable. You don't have to pay for those extra 10 or 15 users until you literally outgrow that resource platform. So it's a very different model compared to all the other cloud version, cloud software companies, which you will pay for every single user, whether they, whether they use it in an hour. Sometimes they have a lighter user, but you'll still pay for that user. Data ownership, we've already talked about that you own your data. You can get your data. They do not keep it, locked up so that you can't get to it. You can get to it with that snapshot anytime, and again, big differentiator with Acumatica versus everybody else. Free training, Acumatica University. You don't even have to be a customer. You could go out and set up and take their training courses. They're very good. They're the same training courses that every one of my consultants take. They get awarded their badges. A really great, detailed, interactive environment. If you want to implement it and learn on your own and not have to pay a consultant time, you can get the training if you have people that are willing to just go in that environment and learn. It's again, same environment. Acumatica makes it available. Acumatica University is available for everyone. 2020 R1 just came out in February. Acumatica does 2 releases. Both an R1 and an R2. R1 comes out in March usually, and R2 comes out typically in October. The amount of features that Acumatica adds with each release is just mind-blowing. It truly is a product that is moving and adapting to to this industry as it's changing right before our eyes. If you're going to be driving in a car, you want a car that's going to get you where you need to go fast, not one that's going at a turtle pace or has no new features at all. These are just highlights of what was done in the latest release. You can all read through this. I mean, and again, we talked through a few of these in the first session, but over 600 pages of release notes just in the R1 release. That's how many features were outlined in the R1 release just a couple of months ago. This screen, we're going to touch. John is going to do a high-level overview of some of the things that he did in the first session, just so that to bring some people up to speed, so they understand them, moving around the menu. But I mean, Acumatica is full of standard dashboards, which we load when we load a new client, and these screens responsively change, based on the size. Responsive design, it's called. I mean, many people would be familiar with that with their websites, where websites 8 years ago or 10 years ago had to run on a mobile platform or a desktop platform, and you had to, they were 2 different platforms. Acumatica was written in a time where the entire application can literally change itself depending upon the size of the device it's being run on. So long and short is, again, not many systems out there that I'm aware of, that can do this. Yeah, they can run on a mobile platform, but it's a different platform. Acumatica, that same screen that you see there, if Sean's going to show you real quick, we get into it, will literally change itself based on the size of the window that it can be displayed in. We're here to say is thank you for joining us at this point. We're going to switch it over to Sean and Stacy, and I hope you find value in the time spent. I'd love to get your feedback at the end, whether or not we covered some good information as far as these lunch and learns in the Q&A afterwards. Thanks again for giving me the time to go through that.
I'm just going to get started with a quick overview of some of the navigation we talked about in last week's session. And once we do that, Stacy's going to jump on and start walking us through some of the financial details. As everyone that was on the call last week, and it is actually, again, available on our website to review in more detail, but I'm just going to kind of give that quick overview, starting with the universal search. So anyone that was on the call last week would probably remember we added a contact called Alice Hobbs. So with the universal search option, it's now going through a menu. I'm not finding anything Hobbs, but now I have my contact that I've entered, and I also have the file that I entered from last week that's showing that is now available to be searched through the entire platform. If I was looking for something a little simpler like a customer, I can actually look at the menu and it'll actually show me every single menu item that has the word customer. If I wanted to do more of like a profile screen, I enter the exact customers and it's showing me where it's available on 2 different workspaces. Talking about the workspaces, we'll jump over there. We're going to take a look at our, I'll jump into finance today because that's really where we're going to be. When we first log in, it's showing me what the system in the system admin fields is your everyday quick menu, what that person with access is going to see. If I click down bottom, I can show all of the different all the menu items. And if I clicked show less, it's now disappeared and shrunk back to there. Each user can personalize their workspace with adding items to the quick menu or removing items from the quick menu so that it'll relieve some of that space for them and that it'll kind of narrow down where they're looking at. So everywhere you see a gold star is actually something that I favorite. I kind of use the favorites of different areas we're going to be using on today's session so that I know right away where I can get to them with the star. But also that star, by clicking it, is actually making it a favorite. So I have my own personalized workspace with all the different modules or workspaces assigned to that. And we can do that with the menu that we talked about, or we can also do it with what they call tiles. Tiles are a great way if you want to add some kind of parameter or condition to pass while I'm opening that journal entry. Maybe I want to do it's a GL or a certain type. I'm going there and it's going to pass that, so my user is going right to that screen. The next thing to talk about there, is the dashboard. And the dashboard is a good way to kind of talk about the responsive design that George mentioned through his slides. So right here, I'm going to clear this out, but for this particular dashboard, it's a customer view of everything that's going on through the business, opportunities, accounts receivable, support cases, contacts, related activities, your monthly transactions. But if I click to make it a smaller window in Chrome, you can see how it actually modified the sizes here of the cells and the widgets to kind of align a little better for that size. But as I drag it, it'll start shifting it to maybe more of an iPad or a tablet layout, so that if I scroll down, it's just laying that in a new way. Expanding it is going to bring it right back. And another feature that is showing on this one is the parameters. So I'm going to look at USA Bartending School, which is something that we looked at last week. When I select that, it's going to update all the widgets and charts based only on that particular customer account. The next thing I'm going to go into is actually just the opportunity screen again. And again, just to kind of show the different level of color conditioning in different ways we can use pivot tables and filters on a screen. We're going to touch a little more on these later in the presentation on the AP bill screen and on some of the receivable items. So for this particular one, we're pulling color condition at a line level, which is actually the status of my opportunity. You can see one is green, yellow is new, bringing attention to it. Open is things that are being worked on, and there's also red for lost. I have another cell-specific highlight, which is blue for prospect. That allows, again, just to bring attention just to that one cell. There's different ways I can actually personalize this generic inquiry for myself, which is dragging and dropping the header. I could use what they call a column configurator, and I could remove, I can remove or add different fields that are available on this generic inquiry. And again, I can still drag and drop them as well. And this is personalized just for this particular user. If I have access rights, I can add different filters. Example, my opportunity, with taking advantage of the owner looking at the @me, which is connected to the user that signed into the application. But also that I have access, I can share this throughout the system to all the users that they can see this on that generic inquiry if they have access. Or also I can make it a default, so when I go into opportunities, I don't want to see all records, I want to see my opportunities. And I can actually copy it and make additional ones, or just create a brand new filter from scratch. Another way to filter data is a shortcut, which is Shift F. So if I go to Shift F and I click on US Bartending School and I hit Shift F, you can see it automatically knew to filter the contains USA bartending. If I hit Shift F again, it's going to automatically remove that. If I look at other higher header level filters, I can filter on status by selecting all, clear all, select one, and now it's going to filter on all my opens. If I would like just to get rid of this, not really touch it, I can drag and drop that away. It's going to remove that filter. Another cool feature is with filtering, I can tie it into a pivot table, very, very similar to Excel. So if I want to take a look at all my open filtered opportunities and kind of stage them by customer and by the stage they're in, you can see it's breaking it down. I'm going to click on this one here. It's showing me that it's an unassigned contact. That's why, excuse me, everything's residing in the one amount. I can do a drill in from a field. So I clicked on that value and it brought me to what's equaling that value. And the one last thing I'd like to show on the navigation is coming back to all records. And if I'm looking at this US Bartending School and tying back to the information we talked about on a dashboard, I can use this as a side panel. So the system knows that by clicking on US Bartender, I can actually pull right to their screen, on that profile screen, or I can go to the dashboard that we originally looked at, which is the customer account ID of bartending, USA Bartending, and it's giving me that same view and taking advantage of that responsive design, but also allows me to expand that to overlay on this if I want to see more detail. That is what I'd like to do as a recap of the navigation and what's going on in Acumatica for the user experience. And I'm just going to turn it over now to Stacy so she can start with the financials.
Thanks, Sean. So as George indicated in one of his earlier slides, today we're going to be focusing on the financial management suite inside of Acumatica. The financial management suite consists of your general ledger, your banking, your receivables, and your payables. So while time isn't going to permit for me to take you through all the functionality, I do want to point out that I've used many ERP and accounting systems over the years myself personally, and I can tell you that all the kind of the core functionality that you would expect in one of those systems, it exists and it resides in Acumatica. So what we're going to focus on today, just because of the amount of time we have, are just some key features where I think Acumatica does a great job, some features where that particular functionality may not exist in other ERP systems. So before we jump into the general ledger, I do want to take a moment and talk about how Acumatica utilizes the ability to combine either multiple companies or multiple branches into a single Acumatica tenant. So what you're seeing here on the screen is a tree structure of the company branch setup that we have here in this demo company. What we're seeing here are 3 companies, Revision 2 Capital, 2 Products, and 2 Services, with some branches, or you may refer to them as a location, underneath the company. So, when you're looking at other systems, a lot of times it's lacking in ability to be able to take those companies or those branches and put them all into one tenant or one database. Acumatica does a great job of allowing that. Some of the advantages of having companies and branches all in one Acumatica tenant is that you don't need to log in and out of the particular company or branch. Also, you can share master records. So you can share the same chart of accounts. You can share same customers, vendors, items. So it creates less maintenance on those type of records as well when you're able to have them all living within the same environment. Some things that you can do at a company branch level is you can upload logos, so you can have a logo that's specific to a company or a branch. 1099 reporting, Acumatica has a lot of diversity in that particular area where you can specify whether or not you do 1099 reporting under a particular company or branch. And Sean is going to take us there now so we can see some of that. So under the company details, you can see the checkbox in the middle of the screen where you can say if you're filing 1099 1099s by either a company or by branch, which is turned on here. The other thing is you go to visual appearance, and you're going to see this is where you can upload a logo that is specific to this company. That can be used as your site logo or as your report logo. So depending on if you're sending out an invoice to your customer, which company that invoice is for, it's going to go out and it's going to pull the right logo based on what is uploaded in this company. Or you can get down to a branch level as well, that branch screen. One other thing that you can do at a company or branch level is you can set some company-specific coloring to that company to give you a quick visual of which company or which branch you're logged into. So we have this particular branch, Products Wholesale. Their color is set to like a reddish color, whereas if we were to go look at some other branches, they would have a different color. So what that translates to is when we toggle up top between different companies or branches, you're going to notice the coloring updates to that particular branch or company's color. So again, because you're logging into Acumatica once, having that color kind of right out there just helps remind you which company or branch you actually have set and will be working in. Now, to be able to put all of your companies into one Acumatica tenant, there are a couple of requirements that do need to be met. They do need to have the same GL account structure. And currently they all need to have the same base currency. So if you're in a multi-currency environment and your companies have different base currencies, today we can't consolidate that all into one tenant. Acumatica is talking about coming out with some enhanced functionality in the near future that will allow us to combine companies into one environment, even if there is a different base currency. But today those are the 2 restrictions, right? If you don't have the same chart of account structure, or you have different base currencies for your companies, we would need to set those up separately. One thing that I do want to point out that I think is different in Acumatica compared to other systems that I've worked in is that it does allow you to combine if you have a different calendar year per company. So if I was to navigate over to my company financial calendar, here's where you're going to see that per company, here's where you set up your year, whether it be calendar year or fiscal year. All right, so that's enough on companies. I hope that gives you just a kind of a good overview of what you can do as far as consolidating your companies into one and the benefits of that. So now we're going to jump over into the finance module. So here, right, this is where our general ledger resides, and we're going to start talking about the chart of accounts first here in Acumatica. So the approach that Acumatica takes when it comes to chart of accounts is it has an account field for your main account number, or some people refer to it as your natural account number. And then if you want to tag that transaction and that account with another dimension, Acumatica has what's called sub-accounts. Now, I know systems like GP, and there are others, the way their account structures are set up is it takes that main or natural account and it concatenates it together with your sub-accounts, with your other dimensions, right, that you would be able to then slice and dice your information on from a reporting perspective. Now, the advantage of having that chart of account and that sub-account actually separated out is it does create a lot less accounts that you actually have to create and maintain in your general ledger. You're not having to go out and to create all those different combinations of accounts that use the account and the sub-accounts together like you do inside of a system like GP. So here we're seeing your chart of accounts, pretty standard, not going to take a lot of time to go over that. I think it explains itself by looking at the screen. I do want to navigate over to the sub-account screen just to give you a quick preview of that. So here's our sub-accounts we're using in this demo company. It consists of a product line, which is that first segment, so the characters leading up to the hyphen, and then the second segment is a department. So you can mix and match, right, values from each of those different sub-account segments together. If you don't want to, if you don't have a value for one, the system pre-fills that with zeros. So Acumatica can have an unlimited number of sub-accounts. So you're not just restricted to the 2 that you're seeing here, nor are you restricted to the character width of 3 that you're seeing here. It's totally configurable where you could have 4 or 5 sub-accounts of any character length that you wish. So what does this look like when we're transacting now? So we're going to go over to a journal entry that's already been created. We're going to go to AP number 74, and we're going to look at what the account and sub-account combination looks like in an entry that was created. So down in the document details in that grid-like area, you're going to see the second column next to branch, right? That's what identifies our account number. So here we're seeing this entry is getting posted to accounts payable as well as our inventory purchase accrual account. The column next to the description is our sub-account. Okay, so here's where we see that sub-account in a separate field from our natural. And it's telling me that it's booking it to the CON product line. The zeros is an indication that, hey, it's product line specific. We didn't tag it with a department. So that's how the tagging of the sub-account looks within a transaction. If you were to key in this journal entry yourself, again, you're going to specify your account, and then you're going to tag it with a sub-account if it applies. One other thing I'd like to point out in this journal entry that where I think Acumatica stands out from other ERP systems are those 3 columns all the way to the right. So typically what I see in most systems is you've got to look at like reports that include your journal entry information to be able to see sub-ledger information. Here, right within this journal transaction, we're seeing the customer or vendor, depending on what type of transaction this is. We're seeing their ID. We're also seeing the inventory items that came into play on this transaction. And we're seeing the AP reference number, the document number. So again, I just think that's something that separates Acumatica out from others. Of course, you can always view back into your source document by hitting that View Source Document button above the grid, and that will bring you to the actual AP bill right from the transaction. But without even having to go there, you can tell who the vendor was and what was actually purchased right from looking at the journal entry in itself. Now, one thing I want to point out before we close this form is I've been saying the word journal entry. I think us as accountants, right, that's a typical term, right, for transactions that are created here in the general ledger. What you're seeing here on the screen that you may have been wondering what it was is up towards the top below the module, you're seeing batch number. You're not seeing the word journal entry anywhere. In Acumatica, they just happen to call it a batch number, but that batch number field is what most of us accountants understand to be known as a journal entry number. Just want to point that out in case you were wondering what that batch number field was up there. So I'm going to actually bring you into a new journal entry screen. And we're not going to go through the exercise of manually creating an entry. I want to show you some of the power that Acumatica has to be able to quickly create entries so that you don't have to do things manually. We're going to use journal entry, previous journal entry, GL 1436, as the basis for these new entries that we're going to be creating here. And the first thing I want to show you is the copy-paste function here. So if you have an entry that perhaps you've created before and you just want to quickly take a copy of that and create a new one so you don't have to manually key it in, you can use this copy function that you see highlighted on the screen. So all you do is you select copy. Once you have that journal transaction pulled up, you hit the plus button, and then we're going to go back to that little clipboard and we're going to say paste. And there's your entry. So it's as easy as that to take a previous entry, copy, and paste it. Now, if your debits or credit amounts happen to be different, you certainly have the opportunity before you go ahead and finalize and release this transaction, you can have the opportunity to change those debit or credit amounts. One thing that you're going to see throughout the system on any transactions is a button called release. So for people that have used other systems in the past, a lot of times other systems call that as posting. So Acumatica's term release equates to that posting term that you may be acclimated or familiar with from other systems. So once a transaction is released, right, it's finalized. Because this is a GAAP compliant system, you can't make any changes to a released transaction. So the other way that we can, while this is releasing, the other way we can quickly create a transaction so we don't have to do manual entry is to use the transaction upload functionality. So we already have an Excel file prepared with all of our distribution detail in that, and we're going to use this file upload function to quickly take the information from that Excel file and bring that into Acumatica. So we're navigating out to that previously saved Excel file, and we're going to hit the upload button and click OK to these common settings. And here is basically our mapping. So it's mapping the column names in the Excel file to the same column names that it's finding in this journal transaction. So as long as those column names are one and the same, the mapping happens automatically, and you can just take what's defaulting in, click OK, and it's going to upload that transaction. So again, this is great where you might have similar transactions, week after week or month after month, but maybe the dollar amounts change. I find that it's easier to update dollar amounts in Excel instead of doing it right here in Acumatica. So that's where, this upload functionality comes into hand, where you can, update your dollar amounts in that file that you used over and over again, update them in Excel, and then upload them automatically through this upload function. All right, so we can go ahead and we'll just release this transaction as well. All right, so now we're going to go look at some reporting here in the finance module, and we're going to start with our trial balance. So Acumatica has a trial balance summary and a trial balance detail. The summary trial balance is a representation, right, of your account balances with their net change through whatever period that you set, and it's rolling it up by the natural account number. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to run this report, and what you're seeing here is just the account. It is not breaking it out by sub-account here in this summary view. Again, in other systems that I've seen, sometimes it's very challenging because of the way systems use one account, one field to concatenate your natural account with all your sub-accounts. I've seen it very difficult to get that roll up just of the account without it having, including that account activity. So that's what the trial balance summary does for you. It rolls it up just by the natural account. Now we're going to drill into the credit card fees account 61150. So right from this report here, it's got drill down functionality to the account details inquiry here in Acumatica. And I thought we had $200 on there, but I may have picked the wrong account. We can go back to that account summary and where we see the $200. So that brings us to the account details inquiry. So just wanted to point that out that you do have drill backs to the report here. The other report I want to show you is the trial balance detail. And the trial balance detail report, give Sean a minute to get there, is going to show us a breakdown of the activity by not just account, but also sub-account. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to run this. Okay. So here you're seeing in column 2 the account number, and column 4 is the sub-account number. So if you look at your 40,000 account, for example, based on the combination of that 40,000 account with the sub-accounts, okay, you're seeing it repeat multiple times, and that's because its activity prior to May 20th was tagged with a different sub-account combination. Okay. And again, we won't go into it, but it does have drill back capability as well. So anywhere you see that blue and that underline, that indicates that there is drill back functionality there. Another area of reporting we're going to look at is on our financial statements. So we're going to look at our balance sheet. So Acumatica allows you to fully customize your financial reports using a combination of row, column, and unit sets. So we're going to look at a balance sheet for the year of for the period of 12 of 2019, and we're going to run this. What I want to point out to you here is, yes, we've got a balance sheet, right, like we would all, typically expect to see, but there is what's called grouping on this balance sheet. So, Sean, if you click the grouping, here we see a tree of our company branch structure. So we're looking at a consolidated balance sheet at its high view here. If we click on any one of those units in the tree, the report is automatically going to filter the data based on that particular unit. In this case, it's a branch or it's a company. So here's where you're able to quickly see a consolidated statement across all your companies, and then also look at that at a company or branch level as well. The same thing goes on an income statement. If we go over to an income statement, and we're going to look at our P&L product line. We're going to run that for the same period, 12 of 2019. Okay, we have that unit set or that grouping again here. So what we did that's a little bit different here is, yes, we are seeing it broken out by company and by branch, but we also utilized the segment in our sub-account called product line, and we took that segment and we further defined this unit set to allow us to slice and dice not only by company or branch, but by the product line for that particular company or branch. So if I click on consumer goods, here's where we can see our consumer goods P&L for retail, for the retail branch. If I go down under the wholesale branch, I can now see my consumer goods sales and expenses for the wholesale branch. So that's one of the advantages, right, of having sub-accounts. You can then take those sub-accounts and you can slice and dice all the transactions that were tagged with that sub-account and use that to break out that information here on your financial statements. All right, so moving forward to the banking module. So because Acumatica allows you to combine company and branches all into one, when it comes to bank accounts, your bank accounts can easily be restricted to a certain branch or company. So if you're using more of like a decentralized payables and receivables processing. You may want to restrict your bank account to a particular branch or company. If you're using more of a centralized mode, where maybe you've got, a parent company or a corporate branch that is paying everything on behalf of everybody else, right? You can open up that restriction so that that bank account can be used across those companies and those branches. We're going to look at how Acumatica is very, very flexible in the area where it doesn't care where the original transaction originates whenever you're pulling or utilizing the cash account. Some systems that I've used, right, if it's a banking transaction and it's hitting the cash account, right, you got to either have that transaction originate in AR or AP, or you have to do it in the banking module. You're not allowed to create a journal entry and have that flow up to banking. Acumatica is different in that area, and in the fact that you can create a journal entry and reference your cash account, and it knows to take that transaction and move it up to the bank account that's associated with that cash account you booked to in the general ledger. So we're going to look at the cash account details inquiry, and we're going to see that that journal entry that we just created that was related to payroll, we're going to see that entry here in our cash account details inquiry. So the entry that we just created was actually down on the bottom, rows GL 1437 and 1438. Right? You can see that even though those didn't originate in the banking module, we are seeing those entries here in the bank module waiting to be reconciled. We're going to show you how to create a quick bank transaction should you ever just want to come into the bank module, right, and not do a journal entry to cash and whatever the applicable offset accounts are. So to be able to create a bank transaction, you have to have some predefined codes set up, which Acumatica refers to as an entry type. And behind that code is some intelligence so that it knows, based on the code that you choose or the entry type that you choose, it knows or it suggests what the offset account should be to cash. So we're going to show you this bank transaction that we're creating for credit card fees here. And again, instead of manually keying this in, we're going to use this upload functionality where we've already created an Excel file, and we're going to upload the details. I think you just need to pull, did you pull journal transactions, Sean, or maybe my eyes? Yeah, go ahead. Maybe it was right. Maybe I didn't see. I think we want the bank transactions. There we go. Thank you. The bank transaction file here. Okay, so it's pulling it in, and what we're doing is we're recording all the credit card fees for all the different branches. Okay, and you'll notice that if I was to add one more line, I don't need to pick the offset account, so Sean's just going to go add another line. Look at the offset account. Based on the entry type, it knows anytime I'm creating a transaction for a credit card fee, it knows what account to book it to automatically. So that's kind of the advantage of using entry types. You can override them, but it does help expedite that manual entry, and it keeps the accounting a bit more consistent. So, outside of this, the banking module does basically what you would expect. It's got all of your typical inquiries to help you manage your cash. It has the bank reconciliations, which can be manual or it can be automated. We can pull statements down from your bank and we can automate that process for you with out-of-the-box functionality. Okay, so we are going to move on to payables now. And we're going to navigate over to the bills and adjustment generic inquiry. And one thing I want to draw your attention to are those rows highlighted in green. So we're utilizing that conditional formatting that Sean talked about earlier, where we're trying to draw attention to any bills or adjustments that are still open that still need to be paid. So this is just another example of how we can use conditional formatting here over in our bills and adjustment generic inquiry. All of the user personalization that Sean talked about in the opportunity can be applied here on this inquiry as well as anywhere else in the system. So meaning you can do your filtering, you can move your columns, drag and drop your columns. You can use your column chooser to either add or remove columns. So just wanted to point out that that functionality he showed you, right, that carries forward into all the other modules so that you can personalize any form that you're working with on a regular basis. So we are going to jump in and we are going to create an AP bill. And we're going to use our go-to vendor, AA vendor. And we're going to key in a bill here for $1,000. Now, one thing I want you to notice is that GL account 50,000, right? That's pulling in automatically. That's coming from the vendor profile. We have the default expense account. In this case, it's a COGS account that's to be used whenever we transact on this vendor. So, Sean, if you can just save this and take this off hold. One thing I want to point out that I feel is very, very different here than most other systems is that Acumatica has this pre-release functionality. So typically, right before you can pay any bill, you have to decide what account you want to, expense this to, and you have to release it, which creates that journal entry in the general ledger, and then now this bill is open for you to make payment on. Well, sometimes the challenge is that some of our AP clerks has is they either don't know what GL account this particular bill needs to get booked to, or maybe they're questioning which account it should be. So Acumatica has this function called pre-release. And even though I have that 50,000 account specified down in the document details, when I use the pre-release functionality, it goes out to the vendor card. And Sean, if you can open up that vendor card for a moment, or that vendor profile for a moment, and go over to the GL Accounts tab. Here you're going to see down on the very bottom, there's what's called a reclassification account. So anytime now, if we go back to that bills and adjustment, if I select pre-release, instead of using that 50,000 account, it's actually going to go to that 8120 account, which is called reclassification expense. So what does this mean, right, to our users? This means to basically our accountants, whoever is really ultimately in charge of making sure our bills get posted to the right GL accounts, this is a visual indicator to them that this AP bill account coding was in question. So we use this pre-release reclassification functionality. So this created a journal entry. Let's go over to our financial details. It created a journal entry, and you're going to see instead of it using that 50,000 account, it actually booked it to the 8120. Now, when this bill is in pre-release mode, I can still pay it. So even though I'm not sure what expense account it gets booked to, I can go and pay that bill. And this bill will just be sitting out there in this pre-release status until someone goes in and they either verify the coding that was used in the document details, or they change it and then they release. So that's what we're going to do next. So if we go over to bills, back to that bill and adjustments, okay, and again, document details, it shows the 50,000 account, even though that's not what it was originally posted to, right? So I'm opening this up, and I'm saying, okay, yep, I agree that the account that the clerk thought we should use, it's correct. So I'm going to go back up to my, my button where it says release, and I'm going to select that. This is going to create a second journal entry, which we can look at under the Financial Details tab. And here's where you're going to see it's coming out of that 8120 account, and it's now getting booked to COGS. So because of this pre-release functionality, that bill didn't have to get, held up in the mix, right? The AP clerk was able to push it through the pre-release status. That's an indicator someone needs to look at it, and I can still pay it if I need to. So I think that functionality is pretty cool. quick checks. So if you need to do like a check on the fly, you don't have the bill in the system yet, you can use quick checks to quickly create that check. This basically allows you to enter the expense and pay it all in one. So if we hit the plus button, we're going to go and we're going to create a quick meals reimbursement to one of our employees. So we're going to pull up our employee, Michael Andrew. And we're going to do a lunch reimbursement for him for $15. Now, you could utilize quantities, unit measures if you want. That's optional, not required. Now, the default account coming in from Michael's profile is $6,300. We're going to overwrite this because this is reimbursement for a meal. Okay, we're going to take it off. We're going to hold, and we're going to save. You'll notice that the status changes to pending print, which means we got to go print this check now. We can do that right from our Actions menu. Print our check. And here's the check it's proposing to print. We say OK after we verify our check number. And here it comes up on the screen. So this is just a visual image of that check. Once you print, then you can go and you can release the check if it printed fine. So that's just a quick way to get a check out the door if you don't yet have the bill in the system. We're going to move over to prepare payments, and we're just going to talk about what this screen can do for you. So the prepare payment screen is a way to be able to define some parameters for a particular cash account and payment method so that the system suggests what you should pay based on the parameters that you have defined. So we're going to say we're paying everything by check for cash account 1020. Here, if I say I want to pay everything that's due within, let's just say 1 day, right, it's going to go out. And if you could do due date, yeah, there you go. You can see my list refiltered, right, because not all of those open bills met that criteria. So it filtered out what didn't meet that criteria down in that list. And I can go ahead and I can make a selection here. It's going to tell me if I select them all what the total amount is, which is nice because you've got your available cash balance. And as you select, it's calculating what the total amount of all those payments that you selected are. And here you can then just process and print them all at once. So while you can do payments one by one, you can use this prepare payment form to apply some logic so that the system will suggest what you pay based on due dates or cash discount dates, things like that. The last thing we want to show you here over in the Payables module is an expense receipt that we're going to remit using the mobile app. So Sean's going to bring up his mobile device. He's going to mirror that here for us. And we're going to go in and we are going to create an expense receipt. And we're actually going to show you how we are going to take a picture of that receipt. So here he is. He just activated his camera, took a picture of the receipt. When you do that, it actually starts the expense receipt transaction for you, where he's going to add a description. He's going to pick what type of expense item it was. This is what's going to default the GL account right for him, the business travel. He's going to put in any amount. $49. Okay, and then he's going to go ahead and he's going to save that. Oh, sorry, he's going to actually say if he paid it with his own personal credit card or cash, or if he used a corporate card. So you can actually specify the difference here, if it was personal or corporate, and the system will behave differently based on what you select. So if you say it was a personal, paid with your personal account, it's going to create an AP bill, which you'll see in a moment, where it's going to propose that you pay this Maxwell Baker, who is entering this receipt. You're going to pay him for the $49. If you use the corporate credit card, it would create that payable, but it would pay it with your corporate credit card so that you have a balance in your corporate credit card liability account. So we have our expense receipt. created, we're going to go over to the time and expense module, and we're going to go pull up that receipt. So depending on what your approval process is, right here you can see here's our open receipt. Someone's going to go ahead, they're going to review that. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, you've got your file attached. This is the image of the receipt. Okay, so people can review that, make sure the coding was all correct. And then once you're good, you can go ahead up to your action menu, and we can create a claim out of this. So you can have multiple receipts, right, that are kind of accumulating, and then you can create one claim, which will create one AP bill out of them, all of them, if you choose to reimburse in that manner. So here's our claim with just the one receipt. So we're going to go to Actions, and we're going to submit that claim. Through the submission of the claim, this actually creates, we have an approval process on here. So that's optional. We're going to release this. And then this is going to create the AP bill over in our Payables module for Maxwell Baker. Now, under the Financial Details tab, you have a direct link to that bill that was just created. So now you have an open AP bill sitting out here waiting to be paid to Maxwell Baker for that expense claim. So just wanted to kind of give you an overview of how that works and how that flows into the AP module. So we're going to go over to our receivables module really quick. And I just want to point out to you here how Acumatica's receivable module is different, again, from other ERP systems in the fact that it allows you to create a detailed invoice. A lot of systems, unless you own the sales order processing module, you can't create detailed invoices for your customers. It's more of a summary level invoice. Because of the way Acumatica is structured and allows you to utilize non-stock items, it gives you the ability to create a detailed invoice for your customers using either non-stock items or service items, or you don't have to use any items at all if you choose to go in that direction, and you can just put in an amount that would display on the invoice here. So we're going to create an invoice for our customer, U.S. Bartending, and we're going to invoice them for some annual maintenance as well as an extended warranty. Now, because of the non-stock items that we're pulling in, we already have the coding for the account associated with that non-stock item, so it knows to use the 40,000 account. And we also have a price list set up for that particular annual maintenance item, so the price is defaulting in automatically for us. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save that. Now, I'm not going to release this right away because I want to introduce the recurring transaction functionality to you. So because this is annual maintenance and this warranty is only good for a year, instead of having to every year go out and create that maintenance bill, we could make use of recurring transactions here where we can set up a template that includes that balanced invoice that we just created so that that invoice will recur year after year until we go ahead and we cancel that. So we put in a description of the recurring maintenance renewal. We're saying it's recurring monthly every 12 months, okay, on a particular day, and we'll just pick today's dates. And then we're going to go add that balanced invoice here to this recurring template. This is how it knows which invoices are actually being included in this recurring schedule. So I'm going to hit save. One thing you'll notice if we go back to that invoice, the status of that invoice that was originally balanced has changed to scheduled. So that's your indicator that you know that that invoice is being used as the base for recurring transactions. So we can go ahead and we can run our recurring transaction. You can do this one by one. If you have a lot of them set up, there is a process that will just go ahead and create everything that's basically due to be created. We go to the Generate Documents, and here you can see that recurring invoice that is going to recur once a year. Okay. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to release this really quick, and then I'm just going to show you the cash receipt process as we close out the functionality here in the receivables module. So we're going to go over to payments and applications. You could also have gotten to this right from the invoice if you chose to do so and could have paid the invoice that way. We're going to hit the plus button and we're going to pull up our customer US bartending. Now when I pull up the customer, what's going to load in the grid are all the open invoices. And here's where I can go and I can decide once I set my cash account which invoices we're paying. So we could put up in our payment amount up in the header, $14,500. And then we can go select that bottom invoice and it's going to take that payment of $14,500 and allow me to apply it to that invoice that I just selected. The system does have logic built into it if we enable it, where it could actually do the apply automatically if you chose to have the system configured that way to automatically apply to the oldest invoice moving forward. So that wraps up the receivables module. So kind of in conclusion to all this, we're going to go, you can go ahead and release that, Sean. We are going to go and we're going to navigate back over to dashboards to see how all this information comes together. So we're first going to look at the AR clerk. So there's an out-of-the-box dashboard here for the AR clerk, which identifies accounts that are overdue, invoices that are 30 days, if any customers are on credit hold, again, invoices if it's 60 days or 90 days. It tells you your top 10 customers that have overdue balances. It gives you information on sales by your salespeople. Acumatica just came out with some dashboard widgets to give you average days to pay and also to tell you like your 10 slowest paying customers as well. So all that information, right, that we're feeding into the AR module, that's all coming into this dashboard and putting together to tell a story about our customers and how that relates to AR here. Same thing on the AP side of things. If we go over to the AP clerk dashboard, here's where it's going to tell us our vendors if we have things that are overdue at the vendor level, our bills that are overdue. And again, if I drill into any of these, it's actually going to show me the details, right, that make up that number or that dollar amount that's being shown here in the widget. So just by drilling into it, that 30, here are all my bills now that are overdue. So going back to the AP clerk, it's telling me what are my cash needs in the next 7, 30, 60 days. All that is being based off of the transactions that are in the system and the due dates assigned to those. The controller dashboard, we'll quickly go over there. Controller dashboard has typical widgets, right, that you would want to see information you want to see based on your business. Again, that's crossing over from AR to AP to the banking module to give you kind of that full picture of where we're at. What do we have for cash on hand? What do we have for, what are our cash requirements going to be? What's my open AR? What am I expecting for cash in the next 30 days? Just to help give you an overall picture, right, of your entire like core financial position here within the system. So that wraps up what we had planned to talk about today in the financial management module. I'm going to turn this back over to George at this point, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So thank you.
We went through a lot of information in a very short period of time, but we did touch on GL, banking, payables, being able to do a remote receipt, and a little bit with AR. Does anybody have any questions? Any feedback from the session? Was it a good use of the past 50 minutes or so?
I wasn't aware of the pre-release, so that was good information to know.
Yeah, and I also think that the reoccurring piece is an interesting aspect, because again, a lot of times, a lot of other systems, that's an additional module. Where built right into the Acumatica functionality is the ability to do that reoccurring piece.
A question on the payables side. Does it have the functionality for POs and to like attach a PO?
It does, and we're going to be covering that in next week's distribution Lunch
Okay,
and
I'm
Learn
sorry.
series.
Okay, thank you.
Another question on the payables. Does it have the functionality to send a notification to your phone to upload the expense receipt? In other words, if you enter it from the computer, but you're missing the actual file, the scanned receipt, will it send you a notification at some point, whether it be to your email or to your phone, to let you know that you're still missing that attachment?
Okay, gotcha. So if you enter the receipt manually into the system, or through the mobile app, you want to know if it's going to stop you from processing if you don't have the file attachment. Okay.
Or send a notification reminding you, a reminder.
Yeah, we could potentially use a business event. We could put we have to look into that. I've never done that exact example with a business event, but we potentially could look at a business event that would kick off if there was no file attachment to a certain type of transaction, in this case being a receipt, and it would notify you. So yeah, we'd have to look into that for sure, but I think it's definitely something that's possible.
George, it's Sean. There were some questions in the Q&A section if we want to read through those quick.
I have one here that says we're currently on MEM, which MEM is a multiple entity manager. It's actually put out by a company called Binary Stream, and it is common with a number of our GP customers. The beauty of Acumatica is that it can handle multiple organizations within the structure. There is what we call an intercompany module that can be added to Acumatica with a minor price increase that will do all the do tos and do froms automatically. And so the answer is again, rather than having to go out to an add-on like Binary Stream for that functionality, Acumatica again has it built in. It's just not an option that they, it's like fixed assets. You can add the fixed assets module in Acumatica, but it is an incremental price increase, and it is a very small increase. Of when you look at it from a yearly standpoint or a monthly standpoint, depending upon how you look at at the cost. But yes, there is functionality for that. And again,
George, can I just add on to that quickly?
Sure, yeah.
The intercompany. Sure. So whether or not you want intercompanies to kick in automatically, that's defined at a company level. Unlike George indicated, that is an additional module that gets added on for a small fee. But once you have that additional module, you can make a decision as to whether or not you want intercompany transactions to be required between some companies, or you might have some where you don't require it at all, and Acumatica can handle either of those situations. So you could have a mix between balancing and not balancing.
Yeah, we've got a question here also now that wants to know about, is this a add-on to GP or a replacement? So good question. I mean, we were on GP for 23 years, Cal was, and when we brought on this cloud solution 3 years ago, it was important. We knew enough about GP in 23 years then that it was important for us to, any new solution we added. We converted from GP to Acumatica, so it is a replacement. But so literally we can bring the information through a light conversion process into setting you up into Acumatica. Sometimes we'll keep the Great Plains system. We kept our Great Plains system out there for about 1.5 years, but we needed to reference back to it. We didn't convert like past payables history, but we did convert our GL history back 7 years. So we were able to actually have GL comparisons back 6 years, even though we'd been on it for 23. We just didn't feel like it was worth going back any further than that. But yeah, it is a replacement, and instead of, you own GP, you pay your enhancement, you probably pay for a server somewhere, or if you have it hosted, there's an additional cost. Acumatica will replace all of that with, the new platform, and it'll be hosted in AWS in that case. And I hope that answers. For instance, there's a question here about widgets and cash forecasting. Stacy, you may want to, talk a little bit about that. I know we can have a forecasting ledger in the GL, but I know Stacy would be able to, talk about that a little quicker. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So we can look at purchase orders created to understand what the commitments are, and we can include that in some of our cash forecasting.
We also have a question having to do with cutting and pasting directly from Excel. You saw where we were able to upload, to Excel. But Stacy, again, I think you can maybe speak to a little bit of this. We do have the ability to cut and paste both on a master file level and on a transaction level throughout Acumatica. So, like if you have a sales order or an AP voucher that you're entering, or a bill that is very similar to a previous bill, or you can create templates. You can literally, paste those templates, or use the template, or copy an existing transaction for that same vendor, and literally have a completed transaction almost out of the box. Stacy, maybe you want to add to that?
Yeah. So there's no. I think. The question is, it looks like they're a GP user, and I know with Infinia you can copy paste multiple entries from an Excel file directly into Acumatica, or with just the native GP functionality, you can kind of do what we did with the upload file. In Acumatica, you can't copy paste directly from Excel into Acumatica. You can copy paste one transaction to another with Acumatica, or you could use the upload feature to upload one, or there's another upload feature called import scenarios that would allow you to import in multiple journal entries from an Excel file very quickly, but not directly like copy paste as we know copy paste to be with Excel. Someone asked about where the trees, column, row layouts. I would think that must be referring to the financial statements. If you can go over to the finance module, over under preferences, you have what's called row sets, column sets, and unit sets. So that's where you create each of those, and then you kind of combine them or marry them together under what you're seeing called report definitions.
Yeah, report definitions are equivalent to Great Plains, what are called trees. The beauty of this report tool that is currently up on the screen right now, report definitions. I mean, it literally is, based on my view, a very, very similar functional setup as FRX as well as MR. The beauty of this is both MR and FRX sat outside of Great Plains. This is built into Acumatica. So speed-wise, drill-down capabilities, the only thing you have to really kind of change in terms of your focus is instead of trees, it's unit sets. For all intents and purposes, it is very similar in terms of rows and columns, and then how you bring them together, and even some of the formulas are similar in how you do that. So it is an easy transition from Great Plains to this reporting tool that is built in as opposed to being outside.
There was one more quick question that came in about creating reports, and the answer is yes, you can create your own reports. There's no need for an Acumatica consultant to do that for you. Although I will say we do have a mix, right? Some clients are not interested in learning how to create their own reports. In that case, we do it for them. But we do always include hours, service hours for training to be able to empower you to be able to create your own reports.
We have one more question. Is NMR had to do separate row formats for each division?
That you shouldn't have to. Again, I'd have to look at your reporting structure. But if we have the divisions broken out as a unit set, which is the tree that George was referring to in MR, that could alleviate the need to have to do separate row formats. And it would filter, right, based on the division that you have selected in your unit set.
I mean, I can tell you in closing that our transition to Acumatica was very transformational. We came from 5 different systems, a lot of add-ons, and we're now in Acumatica. I call it the single version of the truth. You know, all the statements that we send out to our customers now, we just started being able to send out automatic, you know, invoices on the 15th for, you know, for 2 different categories of invoices that might be overdue. There is so much we can do with this system from, you know, from a standard out of the box functionality. But then when you add in the automated business events that we've been utilizing both in 2019 and 2020, and the add-ons we've done for reoccurring billing and maintenance contracts. I mean, this system is just taking what was taking us, like, for example, to, you know, do our billing in the old system, you know, was taking us a day and a half to like a couple of hours. Things that we were doing in cash collections and other areas, we can automate it so it's not somebody has to remember to do this week and that week. I mean, it has made our life, and the visibility. I mean, obviously, I've talked to many people. You know, almost every single customer we have, which is about 350 customers between the GP and the Acumatica space. I mean, as a business owner, being able to see those dashboards, work with the things that we have, you know, it has made my job, you know, and I'm not exaggerating, you know, at least 50 to 70% easier in terms of accessing information and being able to react to things more quickly without running reports. So I leave you with that, you know, because again, you know, we're eating our own dog food here. When it comes to the fact that we're asking customers to trust us, you know, when, you know, with our choice of adding this product as opposed to any of the other products on the market. I can tell you, you know, I don't regret, you know, for 1 minute this choice. I mean, when I look at some of the other products and Oracle having the reputation that it has, Acumatica has been an absolute dream to work with, and I really look at it as being very similar to what we had when we originally had the partnership with Fargo when Great Plains was an independent company. When it became part of Microsoft, I can tell you it became a very different company, a company that was more interested, you know, in their own, you know, promotion of their own products that might add on to it. Acumatica is the real deal. They are truly interested in making the customer experience better with every new release. And I guess I'll leave it at that. Again, thank you everyone for joining. Look forward to seeing you guys next week on our 3rd series, which will include the PO and you know, order entry and sales and you know, that side.